Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 22. Ooh, I forgot what episode I was on. Let me start again. Sorry.
You were right, though. It is episode 22.
It is. Welcome to episode 22 of the Venly Expert Talks. Today I'm joined by Sandy Carter, SVP of Unstoppable Domains, founder of Women of Web3, and chairman of the board of Girls in Tech. And we are going to talk about the 5 essentials for Web3. Thank you so much for joining me, Sandy. I appreciate it.
You are welcome. I'm so excited to be here, Alex. This is my favorite subject to talk about.
Awesome. Great. Well, we can't wait to hear what you've got to say. Before we do, though, I would love to start out with your background. So can you talk about a little bit your life and how you got into this whole thing?
Yeah, so I have pretty much lived my life in tech. I'm now with Unstoppable Domains, which is about a digital identity for Web3. And I got into it because I was working previously at Amazon Web Services. I was looking after the ecosystem there around regulated industry and public sector. And there were a lot of companies starting to ask me about blockchain. You know, I use blockchain for this, I use blockchain for that. And I was like, wow, I'm really fascinated by that. And Alex, since I've been a geek girl my whole life, I decided to really dive deep on the blockchain, see why people put things on chain, why things are off chain. And so that's really how I got into Web3, was really doing that exploration and then doing a bunch of side projects. Once I learned what the chain was, to experiment with crypto and NFTs, and, the list goes on. But my formal job at Amazon Web Services was to help bring everybody into the cloud world, into the AI world, to leverage IoT. Before that, I had my own startup. Super cool, I think, Alex. It was to match a company's personality or culture to a set of innovation tactics. So it's kind of like doing a Myers-Briggs on a corporation and seeing then what innovation tactics would work for them. So, everybody wants to innovate. 93% of CEOs believe that innovation is their secret success, but they a lot of times want to try what other companies are doing. And so we had 90 people come over from a country in Europe. They spent 9 months in Silicon Valley learning what all the Silicon Valley companies did. They went back and guess what? None of those things worked. And that's why I actually created the company to say, if your culture is like this, here are some of the innovation things that would work. If you want to change your culture, which is wicked hard, you can, but this is what you have to do. And then previously, before that startup, I worked for IBM and I managed our AI, our Watson business as well. So that's a little bit about my background and how I got into Web3.
Okay, cool. So are you from the Silicon Valley area?
So I lived in Silicon Valley. I've lived in New York. I've lived all kinds of different places. Obviously, Seattle for Amazon Web Services as well. So I've lived all over, and I've traveled to, one of my claims to fame is I've traveled to 87 different countries doing business, and my goal is to hit 100. So that's my next goal, to get to 100 countries and do business in those.
Very cool. That's quite a goal. Good. If you want to talk at all about Women of Web3 or Girls in Tech for those that don't know about.
Yeah. So part of what I believe, Alex, is that anybody, especially in tech, needs to reach back and pull others with them. And so I've dedicated a lot of my free time to groups like that. One I've chosen is Girls in Tech. Girls in Tech really looks at that, that college age woman who is considering what to do and maybe a couple of jobs outside of college to try to sort out how they use tech and do they know enough about tech and how they look at entrepreneurship. So I'm chairman of the board there. I've been chairman of the board for 5 years, and we now have chapters in 55 different countries. We've got hundreds of thousands of young women around the world who are learning more about technology and also networking and supporting each other. When I moved over to Web3, I was shocked at the lack of diversity that exists at this time. And so what I did was I started like looking around saying, is it that there aren't a lot of women here? Or is it that a lot of women aren't coming in? So if you look at the stats, it's single digit in Web3, Alex. Single digits. And I thought, 25% for Web2 was low. And so the one thing I found out was that women aren't entering Web3 because they don't know what it is. It's reasons why I wanted to come on your podcast, because I want more women and men and diverse groups to understand what it is, that it's not, that it's not something shifty, and it's not something that's undefined. It has a definition and it's not shifty. I had so many people, Alex, that asked me, do you now have a Swiss bank account because you have crypto somewhere in that, Web3 portfolio? Or, Web3 doesn't even exist. It's like a myth. So my mission for Unstoppable Women of Web3 is to train as many women as we can on what Web3 is. I have 78 companies who've now joined me in that quest, folks like Blockchain and OpenSea, to Web2 companies like Google Cloud and Deloitte and Altair who have joined in that mission. And they've dedicated their corporate teams as well to help train women in Web3. So I'm really excited about both. Any of your listeners who want to reach out to me on any of those, I'd be happy to bring you on board if you're a company who wants to dedicate, part of your time to training that next generation on Web3.
Great. Well, very exciting. So, I'm happy to kind of dive into this. I'm very curious. I don't currently know the 5 essentials for Web3 that you've put forth. So let's start with what those are.
I would like to start out, if you're okay, with a definition of Web3.
Sure.
I know there are a couple, but there's no really net definition. So I came up with one sentence. So for me, Web3 is an open movement. So like open source, an open movement to broadly decentralize the internet. Decentralization means it's not controlled by a central group, but it's the power and the computers and everything are spread out. It's decentralized. That allows for individual ownership of identity and personal data. And when people ask me, what's the main difference between Web 2 and Web 3 in one word? In one word, to me, it's ownership. It's that ownership element. And therefore, when I look at the 5 essentials of Web3, I believe that those essentials all build back to that ownership model. So for me, the 5 are decentralization. The second one is digital identity. The third one is blockchain. In fact, everything, Web3, metaverse, et cetera, is built on the chain. The fourth is community. And the fifth is financial benefit to a member, not a user, but a member. And all 5 of those essentials, for me, echo back that ownership. The ownership is part of you, not a company. And so that's how I define it today.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, we can go into each one, Alex, if you'd like, so we can explain it a little bit more as well. So
I would love to.
Okay. Shall we start with let's start with the decentralization. Mm-hmm. Does that sound good to you?
Perfect.
Okay. So if I look at decentralization, one of the reasons that decentralization is so very important, in Web3 is because ownership now, again, we're going back to that ownership word, is not centralized. And so if something's not centralized where everything's coming into a hub, that means it's got to be decentralized or spread out. So think about today, I worked at Amazon Web Services. When Amazon Web Services goes down, you hear about companies around the world that go down. Decentralization provides benefits in several different ways. But one of the big ones is in the ability of a company or a group to stay up, have higher uptime, not to be controlled by a central element, but also to ensure that they are leveraging compute time, et cetera, for lots of different people. Now, you might have heard of like crypto miners, for example. And crypto miners are part of decentralization because what they do is they're using and borrowing time from different companies in order to do that mining. And so, if we think about decentralization is really important, not just for the compute time, but also for the way that that everything is pulled together. So let me give you an example. Maybe that would be an easier way to see it. So for example, if you looked at YouTube versus a company called Theta is a video and entertainment blockchain group powered by the people, so owned by the people, and it's on a decentralized network. And so with just a couple of lines of code, anyone can create this video platform that's easy to use, but more importantly, it's decentralized. Therefore, you've got a no central contract like you would with YouTube. You pay prices. This time you don't have to sign a contract. You don't have to ask for permission to play something. You leverage that decentralized network in order to, really drive that forward. Now, if you're out there and you're thinking, well, Sandy, isn't Web3 today dependent on Web2 technology? You would be accurate. So today we're in the early phases of Web3. Web3, I say, is in the dial-up phase. And so today, Web3 is dependent on things like Amazon Web Services and Google and other Web2 companies. But as our CEO at Unstoppable says, we are building on top of work of prior technologies today, but it's okay because we're in the early stages. Over time, we'll be completely decentralized. So the way I describe this today is our goal is decentralization, but today we're partially decentralized as we make our move to being much more mature.
Great. Very, very interesting outlook there. When do you think we can expect to move forward with that? So, as you said, we're in the dial-up stages. So if we think about the internet, obviously we had that for a while. We're finally out of it. Thank goodness. That was not a fun time. So where do you see us? What's the timeline?
Well, I think that it's going faster than we saw in Web 2. Remember Web 2 when we started out? I still remember back to even the internet, that famous clip on Today's Show where people were trying to describe what is the internet, and half of the hosts were like, "This is never going to take off. We're never going to see this," which is quite funny. I would say 2 to 5 years to be fully there. 5 years, maybe a little longer. But I think we're getting more and more momentum. In fact, Alex, you're seeing today a growth in Web3 developers, which is one of the ways that I judge the momentum of a project. The number of Web3 developers increased 61% year over year, the fastest of any other tech area. So I feel that with all these great, smart people coming over and what they've learned in Web 2, like they have the basis for that, I think that we may even accelerate it. So I'm going to say 2 to 5 years. That's my prediction right now.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to you in 2 to 5 years and see how that's going.
Okay, good. So do that for sure.
Perfect. So then the next part, digital identity, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So digital identity also plays a role in Web3 ownership as well. And if you think about a digital identity, it's an identity that travels with you. So it becomes your wallet, your healthcare data, your education records, essentially everything about you. And in the future, digital identity will even become more important than it is today. But first, let's pause and look at how identity is done in the Web 2 world. So if you think about Web 2, today you go and you sign into Google and you sign into Facebook and you sign into Twitter. And essentially each time you sign in, you're using a different username and a different password to get in. So that's one benefit of Web3. Essentially, you'll have one or maybe two, how many IDs you want, but it's not going to be 289, which is what I have today. I have a password safe with 289 passwords in it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, to track all that information. Now, think about today in Web 2. So I've got 85,000 followers on Twitter. But now if I go to a new platform, let's say Discord, I have 0 followers because I'm starting all over. That new platform doesn't recognize me at all. Why? Because my identity is actually owned by the company, Twitter, Facebook, Google, etc. They own that identity. In the Web3 world, I own my identity. And so therefore, I can sign into a DeFi application or a decentralized finance application with that same digital identity. I can also sign into a game. I could sign into a real estate program that's built on decentralization. I could sign into a metaverse like Atlantis Metaverse or Cook Finance, which is another DeFi app. So I can use that same identity to sign into all of those different areas. Now, the value proposition of that is really great for me as an owner. I now decide who gets to leverage my data. No longer is it a company that decides when to sell my data. I get to decide. So imagine even another company looking to get data from me, a person. Now, instead of paying Facebook for that data, now they can pay me for that data. They could give me larger benefits and they can ensure it's me as a person versus an email address, for example. So the benefits here are great and could be even greater in the future. Now, we're not here today, but in the future, as your identity travels with you, what if that identity contained all of your information about your diplomas, your degrees? My daughter just took classes at a community college. And Alex, I called to get the records so I could transfer those with her when she went to university. When I call them, they asked me to fax them information. Now, first of all, I had to find a fax machine. Secondly, they lost it. So I had to fax 3 times. Finally, they said, oh, you know what? Just snail mail it, like not even email it, like send a letter in the mail.
You need the paper.
Yeah. And so it actually ended up taking 4 months to get the transcript. But what if that college had given me a verified copy of that lived on the blockchain. So it was immutable. No one could change it. It was verified by the university that said, hey, your daughter's taken these 3 classes, or she's got this degree, or she's certified here. Imagine how much easier that would be for employers to verify, Alex, that you had graduated from a particular university, or after you graduated, you took classes here and here and here. It would be so much easier. Let me give you another example of the future. What if your healthcare data was also in that digital identity? I just recently moved from one location to another. I told you I was with Amazon, so I moved. And I've been still trying to get my records. So for 6 months, I've been trying to get my healthcare records transferred down with me. I didn't realize that some places will not even transfer my information to me. They'll only transfer it to another healthcare facility, even though it's information about me. So imagine if I had all of that data myself, I could better manage my healthcare, which we're being asked to do today more and more. So the possibilities here are endless. In fact, people always ask me, what's your favorite Web3 application that you can use a digital identity with? And I say, it hasn't been created yet, because there are going to be so many applications that we can't even imagine today. But the fact that you have a digital identity means that those ownership rights for your identity and for your data now sits with you, not a government and not a corporation. Now, I always like to give the flip side of it. Today we're not there today. We don't have education today. We don't have healthcare. We don't have some of those things. Today, what we have is more, email matching, crypto wallet matching, humanity check, but we're getting there. We're building more each and every time something new comes out. We will get there. And we're also going to need, I believe, standards. So if this digital identity now becomes the way you log into everything, then there have to be some standards that are set. And I also think some, security that you and I as individuals can also evoke on all that precious data that we have as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That was going to be my question of what's standing in the way of our idyllic world, because as you've mentioned there, obviously we still have a huge disconnect of the world still kind of working in fax machines and paper versus even Web 2. So how do you see that development working?
Yeah. So, here's one of the things that I think is interesting. Even in the crypto world today, to protect for security, you have a hot wallet and a cold wallet. And a hot wallet is a wallet that you use every day. It's digital. A cold wallet is actually a physical piece of hardware. Like I have a Ledger cold wallet. I think that in the future that there's going to be more of those devices that we will manage ourselves. This is another place that if you're thinking about doing a startup in Web3 that you could help us with, which is, I think, the user interface, the ability for us to protect our own data will need to become so much easier. I could just imagine, my dad today trying to protect his data. He just wouldn't be able to. Maybe I even couldn't, even though I know a lot about technology. And so that would have to really ease in order for us to be able to protect it at the rate that we need. But in the future, I do see appliances or servers sitting in our house acting as that cold storage for all of our important data that we don't want to share with everyone. I just think the benefits are so great. Imagine, Alex, that you could decide to share, your shoe size to a retailer if they'd give you a coupon, or the fact that you just got a mortgage on a house and you get a bigger coupon, or maybe that you'd want to share particular data with a doctor that you had gathered from multiple folks. They say today that the number one cause of deaths is that the doctor doesn't have complete records about you, that they only see a partial picture because it's so hard for you to get all your data. So he or she, that doctor, is missing data, and therefore they misdiagnose, and that leads to the wrong treatment, which in a lot of cases leads to, death. So I think there's so many benefits that we are going to figure it out. I just think, again, we're in that dial-up phase. We're a little ways away from completely understanding everything about it.
Sure. Very good. So let's pop on to number 3, which I believe is blockchain.
The blockchain. This is how I got started. So I love the blockchain. It is technology, but it's not as hard as you think. It is the backbone of Web3 and the metaverse. And really all it is a trusted set of ledgers or data that is agreed to between multiple parties. So you could almost think about it as a trust creator. It's literally a chain of blocks. The way I like to describe it is a set of storage units. If you have too much stuff in your house, you go out and get a storage unit, you put stuff in that unit, you're storing things there. That's what each block is as part of the blockchain. Each of those blocks are stored on a decentralized network, which makes it even safer because it's not all stored in one place, which enables a whole different mindset. Instead of a company owning your data, now what happens is that data is received from the blockchain only with your permission. Think about it like this. If you were going to write a check for, let's say, $1,000, Alex, let's say you're going to write me $1,000 check. When you would do that, you would want a trusted party. In fact, a check goes through a trusted party, which is today a bank. So you'd write me that check, again, that paper. You'd write me the check would go to the bank would verify, this is Alex. She's got enough money in her account to do that verification, and then it would send me the $1,000. Well, if you think about the blockchain becomes that trusted party. So biggest use case for blockchain today is crypto. Let's say you want to give me $1,000 worth of crypto. Let's say, I don't know, what would that be? 2 ETH, 3 ETH, depending upon where the ETH is today. So what you would do is you would tell the blockchain, a computer, to send that over. The blockchain, the technology, the code, the software does that verification. Are you who you say you are? Do you have enough funds to transfer me that? And then it would automate that process. And so in essence, the verification is done by software, which means you don't have to go in during 8 to 5. It can happen at any time. But in addition, there's transparency if you want it to be transparent because it's on chain. You own your data. So you're sharing your data. A bank isn't sharing it. You're sharing it. It's interoperable. So you could send me ETH from your wallet to my wallet. It interoperates across. It does become immutable, which means that it can't be changed. So once you transfer me that $1,000, there isn't a bank to call up and say, oh, I made a mistake. I didn't mean $1,000. I meant $100. And it is programmable. So there's lots of things that you can do with it today. So I love the blockchain. I think there's so many benefits to it. But again, remember I said we're in the early phases of it. Today, I think more people would put more on the blockchain, but it is expensive. So what you'll see a lot of times, even with Web3 applications, they'll put some data on chain. So if you hear on chain and off chain, they'll put some data on chain because it's expensive. And they'll put some data off chain, like a relational database, because it's not quite as costly. I do think the cost will come down over time. But right now, there is a cost and there is a scaling item too. We have to build up the scale for the blockchain as well. I would also say, just like today, we tell, if you have kids, I have 2 daughters, we tell our kids, don't post that on Facebook. No, you can't get that picture removed. It's there forever. I believe we're going to be saying in the future, don't put that on chain because it's going to be there forever. In fact, you'll hear about people who will vote with their, with something on chain. And then they'll go back and they'll say, oh, I didn't say that, or I didn't believe that, or I didn't support that. But it's all transparent and visible on chain. So a lot of projects will do votes that are on chain and votes that are off chain because they know that if it comes on chain, it's immutable, it's not changeable, and it's visible, it's transparent, so people can see it.
Yeah, definitely some possibilities there in the future. Okay, very good. Shall we move on to your 4th essential?
Yeah, now you don't seem as excited about blockchain as I am. I love the chain. So anyway.
I think you described it very well. If you have more to tell me there, that's great.
I can see her face, you guys. So I was like, she was like, not quite as interesting, but okay. Yeah, the next one I think you're going to find really interesting. So the next area is community. And this one for me is a huge difference between Web 2 and Web 3. So first, let's think about Web 2. So in Web 2, you're a user of an application. So you use Twitter, you use Facebook. You're really not a member. In Web 3, it's really about community. So you are part of the community, which makes you a member, not a user. And because of that, there are some things that are very different in Web 3. For example, one of the terms that you'll hear is a DAO. Decentralized Autonomous Organization. That's why they shorten it to DAO. I actually just wrote a blog about DAOs because I got so many questions about them. So a DAO is simply a community that comes together and they vote. They vote with tokens, an NFT, a non-fungible token. So they vote with tokens, maybe a one person, one vote, one company, one vote, but they're voting as a community. Everybody has a voice in that community. So we see, models now using DAOs to select their next set of fashion that they release, or jewelry designers using that as a way to, to vote on, should it be green or should it be red? We see companies creating DAOs for their corporations. So not having shareholders, but having a DAO structure. Decentraland is a company that's like that. We see real estate coming into a DAO, that community structure, where instead of doing a timeshare, you might do a DAO structure where, you have a shared ownership or fractional ownership that goes along with it. I think it's quite fascinating, to look at all the different elements here as you're moving forward, because this fractional ownership model for a digital native asset, or actually for a tangible asset, people own portions of things as that community because maybe otherwise they can't afford that. And that a concept is growing. The other thing I love about it is as you're part of that community, you have other cool rights as well. So I belong to the Lazy Lions, which is an NFT community. I'm part of the queens of the Lazy Lions. We have the queens and the kings. And we just came out with a roadmap. The mantra of Lazy Lions is community is the project and project is the community. So the roadmap came out, and Alex, that roadmap was built by the members, by the community. And so when it came out, it was unveiled for all the community members to see it, but it wasn't a surprise. There were some surprises in it, but that roadmap compared to a traditional roadmap that was outwardly facing, here, this is built for the community. It's designed with the community. It's designed like that on purpose, and it reflects that community as well. So it's very different than what you'd see in Web 2. And I believe that that's one of the coolest parts of Web 3 is this community aspect.
Mm-hmm. You said that you were receiving so many questions about community being part of Web3 that you wrote a blog. Can I ask what maybe the top one or two questions were that you were getting about that specifically?
Yeah, so I was getting a lot of questions about how, in particular, a DAO works as part of that community structure, how to structure a DAO, and then what are some of the benefits of a DAO. One of the things I love to use as an analogy is, in fact, a lot of these questions started from a conversation I was having where we get together as a family. We have a family meeting once a month. So my husband, myself, our two daughters, our dogs don't get to participate, but the rest of the family gets to participate. We discuss things. There are things that we vote on where it's one person, one vote. There are things where we give the kids a vote, but they don't get a full vote. Like we get 5-1, right? Because we're the parents. And we were talking about that, and someone says, wow, that's like a little mini DAO. And I was like, yeah, it's like a little mini DAO. It's a great way to describe it. And so that's what I was trying to do, is just to simplify what a DAO is, because a DAO sounds really complicated. And essentially, it's just a community that gets together to vote. It could be like, I have a dinner club that I used to belong to in Seattle. We would get together as a community. We would choose different restaurants. We had a little survey thing that we'd say, okay, we're going to try this restaurant today. And that's essentially a little mini DAO too, right? We're voting on which restaurant. Each person got one vote, just like every token is a vote in a DAO. And so I just kind of walk through a couple of examples of DAOs, like the Maker DAO, what happened with the Constitution DAO, just to really hone in on some of the core elements of what that community looks like.
Okay. Do you currently see any obvious need or anything lacking where a DAO could step in?
I think that, there are pros and cons to everything, right? So, some companies have set up a DAO structure because it sounds really cool and really, fun, I guess you would say. But I know some companies right now they feel like they're being slowed down because they have a DAO structure. Because, how much control does the vote hold? Are you going to vote on every item in the roadmap? If so, that might take you a long time. It might put you at a disadvantage. it might put you at an advantage because every feature then is approved by the community. So every feature is wanted. So there are trade-offs to DAOs. I think, I think that DAOs, I would advise you to experiment with the DAO first. So I'm doing a couple of experiments with just small DAOs to see how they work and when they're effective and when they're not effective. That's going to be my second blog, is what makes an effective DAO, because I do think I've learned, some things. Like if you have to go wicked fast and you can go fast enough and experiment, and then if the experiment fails, change, I don't think you should use a DAO. I think if you've got to make really big decisions and you want to really be very thoughtful and really move at a slower pace, I think a DAO is really helpful because then you get the community with you.
Good. Very good. Then your last essential here was about financials. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this one I think is really important as well. So I'm going to take us back to the days of Uber. I was living in San Francisco, and at the time, that was the only city that had Uber. So I became a user of Uber, and I thought it was the coolest thing since sliced bread, right? I could get a ride so easy. I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg. I started telling all my friends in San Francisco, you have to try Uber. I even told my friends in, New York and Boston, and it's coming soon. In Miami, it's coming soon. As soon as it comes, try it out. So I was helping to attract new users for Uber. But when Uber went public, and I think they're maybe 50 billion today, $50 billion. I didn't extract any of that value out of the company, even though I helped to attract those users. In the Web3 world, because you're not a user, you're a member, that value actually accrues to you in the most part, depending upon how the smart contract is written. So let's take an NFT. I told you I was part of the Lazy Lions. I can take my lazy lion, and if I want to, I could make a tattoo of it. I could sell the tattoo of my lazy lion because I own that NFT. I could paint it on the side of a store. I could sell t-shirts with that lazy lion on it. I could create a snowboard and paint the lazy lion design on it. So owning a lazy lion, there are a bunch of perks that come out of that. And I get the commercial rights to that individual lazy lion. So it introduces so much possibility of what could be achieved, again, for the good of the community, right? The value of the whole community rises, lazy lions rise, then the value of my individual asset also rises as well. So, if you think about that, I think that's an interesting model to think through. There are also DAOs that own NFT art. They all invested in NFT art. They have a fractional ownership. And as that gallery of art they own rises, then they also rise, right? And so I think that financial part of the financial benefit should accrue to the owner. Now, one of the things I really love is we're watching music today. And a lot of music artists are jumping into Web3 because, as they sell their music, then they get a fraction of that value every time the music is played or every time the music is used. Unlike today, where they go through an agent or a company or someone else takes part of that, they really get the ownership. I'm seeing some even NFT collections doing that too, right? Like if I buy the Lazy Lion, it doesn't apply to Lazy Lions, but let's just say I buy an NFT of another collection. The artist actually could continue to get a percentage of what I sell. So if I sold a t-shirt, maybe 2% of that would go to the artist. I just find it's an interesting ownership model that is more shared today than in the Web2 model.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You said before that you like to look at both sides of things. So I'm going to ask you, what do you see as potential downsides to this sort of model?
Yeah. So let's think about that. So, today, if you're familiar with Web3 and you go on to buy an NFT, there is a gas fee. And what is that gas fee? Well, the gas fee, you're paying that to use all those decentralized computers. So because nobody owns it, but people are getting financial gain from it, you have to pay a gas fee because you're paying your portion of that decentralized network. That's what you're paying for. And so, I think we have to look at how expensive is it? Like the gas fees. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Alex, but they can go from, okay, you're paying like $2 today to tomorrow. There's a lot of use and you could pay $100. So there's no regulation, right? It's not like real gas where, okay, you're paying $5 today. You're probably going to pay $5 tomorrow. Gas in the Web3 world, you could pay $1 today and $100 tomorrow because it's based on that demand. And so that's always tricky because it's harder to plan for that, right? So if you're going to plan to launch your NFT collection tomorrow, counting on gas fees being low and they're high, that would impact your sales.
Of course. Good. All right. So yeah, no, it's just, it's
It is a lot.
But I've also I don't think I've sat down and thought about these specific topics one after another in this sort of setup. And it's interesting to hear it like this. So, yeah. So out of those 5 topics, because they're all big, and I'm sorry I skipped over blockchain like I did. But which one do you feel is maybe the most important?
Well, that might be a trick question for me, and I'll just do truth in advertising. So, when I came over to Web3, I purposely chose to come to a digital identity company because I felt that was really the most important element. I think all 5 are important. You saw how much I love the blockchain. But I do believe that the most potential is in that digital identity. Just in my mind, having all my information in one place is like a dream. I don't know, you can't see my office, but I have file cabinets with all my information. I would love to have that in one digital place that I could protect it. I see a lot of, I love challenges. I love, figuring out like the challenges we talked about, standards and security, and how would I get my dad to be able to protect his appliance that sat in his room? How do we make that easy enough? How do we explain the digital identity? Today we're starting with a domain as your name. That's like your first step. Just like in the Web2 world, you bought, McDonald's.com should have been your first step. Now your first step is buying, alex.nft or alex.crypto or alex.x so you can start that digital identity. So I feel like it's the gateway to Web3. And because I wanted to be part of the beginning of Web3, I chose that spot because I do believe that it is an understandable one. I want everybody to have their domain and get ready for what's coming with that digital identity. But note, I do work for Unstoppable Domain. So that is what we do. But that is why I chose to come here versus some other Web3 companies that had been courting me.
That's fair. I'm not gonna get mad at you for a little bit of light advertising. That wasn't bad at all. Good. With that, obviously there's a huge opportunity for Web3 growth through digital identity. And I don't want to keep harking back to this timeline thing, but obviously it's something where if we do look back again at Web2, I mean, the .com boom was there. How do we know if that's what's happening again? When do we get past that?
I would say, that right now we are in the boom. I mean, you can see it. You can see people leaving Web2 companies to come to Web3. I told you one of my earmarks is where the developers go. That's where the power is when the developers go somewhere, they're the magic, right? Programming is as close to magic as you can possibly get. And so I think they're the magic makers. So watching where they go is very important. I also just see the power that exists today with these, the power of community. The next generation is looking for that, right? They don't want to be told to do things. They want to be part of the solution. So I just see it also culturally fitting in as well. I told you about my startup where we really evaluated culture a lot, and culture is so hard to change, right? Our saying was culture eats strategy for lunch. And the culture is moving towards the Web3 way of doing business as well. So I think you've got the technology, you've got the developers, you've got the culture, you've got the value. So in my mind, that's why I said, 2 years, we'll start seeing big improvements. Maybe 5 years, we'll see the fruition. It may be longer. I hear some people talk about, 10 years. But I think it might be faster just because of the movement of developers over to the space. Regardless, I think the power is there. If you think about, I did a lot of research before I came here. I talked to hundreds of companies and investors, VCs. I talked to a lot of naysayers, and kind of my bottom line was that blockchain, crypto, NFT, DeFi, metaverse, Web3, whatever you call it, it's real. There are real examples, real use cases, real power today. Secondly, I've seen the use cases, and I believe they're going to disrupt companies and markets. It may not be immediate, but I think that's why we see all the big guys jumping in now, trying to figure out, how do I play as a Web2 brand in a Web3 world, right? It's why, Puma is jumping in with Lazy Lions. It's why, other companies are jumping in to experiment with it, like Nike just purchasing a Web3 company. It's why I see all of those things coming to fruition today. And then finally, there are, people go where the jobs are too, right? There are so many opportunities. My daughter says, a gazillion, Mom, a gazillion. There are a gazillion opportunities out there, tons of use cases. And so I think the future is bright. I don't know if I have to wear shades yet, but I think the future is bright today.
So how far away are we from the true value of Web3?
Yeah, I think we're getting value today. I see value today with applications. At Unstoppable, we already have 175 applications that have integrated with our digital identity. There's value in every single one of those apps. I would say for, the promised land of what Web3 promises, it will be, I think, 2 to 5 years out. Just because of the technology. But I see so much movement coming. I see, all the developers coming over, 62% increase in developers coming over to Web3. I see tons of Web2 folks coming over. I see a lot of use cases now for the, what I would say, everybody, right? Unlike Web2, where it was more technology focused use cases at first, a lot of the first Web3 use cases are very much end user base, like think about buying an NFT or buying music, those kind of things. So I think that we are going to have a great set of value applications that are not just for businesses, but also for consumers. So with all the tech people coming over, all the developers, all of the use cases that exist, both B2B and B2C. Think about even companies experimenting. Nike just bought a Web3 company to participate in the metaverse. It's just incredible. So I believe that 2 to 5 years is probably the right answer.
I find that really interesting, exciting. I've had some people on the Expert Talks here who don't want to push it that quick. They say, no, for that quote unquote promised land, we're looking at 10, 15 years before we're really getting it where it's integrated fully in life. And yeah, so you really see 2 to 5. That's interesting.
Well,
That's
again, I don't think 2 is the promised land, but I think it could be 5 with the number of developers coming over. I know much smarter people than me have projected 10, but I see it happening faster. I don't know. That's just my view. So we'll see. We can replay this later, just like I replay the Today Show over and over and over again and see who's right.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Good. So I see you also started Unstoppable Wow 3. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so if you think about all the things we've been talking about today, Alex, especially about, the community aspect and how we're still in the dial-up phase and there's still a lot of things to do. I believe that this internet, which is the next generation of the internet, needs diverse voices. It should not just be, a bunch of white men defining the future of Web3. Study after study after study shows that the more diversity you have, the more innovation you have. And we need innovation in this space, right? To solve all the problems that we talked about, pricing, scaling, user interface. We have to have diversity in that mix. And so that's why I started Unstoppable Women of Web3. I wanted to provide that simple, how do you get started with Web3? What is Web3? What is blockchain? See, not everybody loves a blockchain. And what are some of the use cases and the non-tech elements that we could really use and leverage? So for me, it's very important that I give back. And this is part of my giving back and part of Unstoppable Domains, who has a commitment to diversity to give back as well. And I've had 78 companies join so far, Alex. I'm so excited by the outpouring of Web 2 and Web 3 companies who want to be part of ensuring the next generation of the internet is created by diverse voices.
Awesome. Definitely fits into that ideal. Awesome. So, what are some great ways then for all these diverse people to be involved right now? How can we get started?
Well, the first thing that I would say is, if you're still unsure about what it is, go and check out, whether you're a man or a woman, go check out unstoppablewow3.com and look at all the education that's out there and kind of brush up on it. But for Web3, you can't just read about it. It's not just like a classroom education. You got to experience it. So I would love for everybody to get a domain. A domain is really important because that domain is your name. Basically, it's your name for Web3. So alex.nft or .crypto, whatever you wanted, you need to go and get that name. That would be something that I would suggest that you do. In order to do that, you can either use an email or connect up to a crypto wallet, which gives you access to purchase and buy in the Web3 world. For me, that would be what I would tell people to get started, is to go and learn about it and then go experience it. The third thing would be to engage in some of the conversations. So there's a lot of conversations that take place on Discord and Twitter Spaces. And go and get engaged in those so that you can ask questions. No question is a stupid question because we're all so early. So ask your questions. If you have it, 10 other people have it too.
Fair. Very good motivation there for sure. Yeah. And then I guess my other kind of follow-up question is, what tips would you specifically give to people who want to be involved with building Web3?
Yeah, if you want to be involved with building Web3, there are a couple of different ways to do it. There are tons of DAOs out there that are taking volunteers. In fact, I was just talking to some guys yesterday, and they're with Web2 companies. They didn't want to quit their Web2 job. They wanted to experiment building. And so they jumped in on some of these projects. There are great classes, MIT, Arizona State University. They're all launching classes, Coursera, that you can start to learn about the chain and blockchain and how to build on top of it as well. So I would encourage you to do that. We need builders. I think Web3 is about builders and creators. So we need both.
Awesome. Well, great. I feel like I've gotten some new perspective on things. I apologize once again for not asking more about blockchain. I know that'll come back to bite me. But yeah, is there anything else that you want to plug before we finish up here?
I would just say, if you guys can reach me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm basically on any social platform out there. If you do have further questions, I invite those. And if you need help getting your domain, since I do work for Unstoppable, please reach out to me and I'd love to help you with that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we will put all of your contact and socials and things in the notes to the show. Hopefully also a link to your blog where maybe they can even read that blog about everything. So good. Then last question. Who do you think we should have on Venly Expert Talks next?
Oh my gosh. So I have a whole list of great women, not because there's only women in the world, but I do think it's really amazing to have some cool women on. I would recommend Kathleen Evans from Sandbox because they're doing some really cool things around the metaverse and gaming. And I feel like that's going to be an area that just explodes. And I think she would be a great guest for you.
Awesome. Yeah, we've definitely had Sebastian from Sandbox, and so that was a very good episode. So yeah, I would like to talk to Kathleen as well. Cool. Awesome. All right. Well then, Sandy, thanks so much for taking your time today and talking me through your essentials. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Alex. Thanks for hosting today, and thanks for all the listeners out there. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Talk to you soon.
Bye.